What would happen if you never brushed your teeth? Sounds gross, right? Well, it's just one of the many bizarre questions we'll be answering today. Get ready to dive into some strange but fascinating topics. Welcome to Fact Frenzy. Today we're tackling some of the most bizarre, weird, and downright strange questions you've always wondered about but maybe never dared to ask. Ever wondered why your fingers wrinkle in water? Or what would happen if the Earth suddenly stopped spinning? We've scoured the internet, taken suggestions from our awesome viewers, and now we're here to give you the answers. In this video, we're not just going to answer these questions, we'll explain the science behind them, throw in some wild facts, and maybe even add a little humor along the way. So, sit tight as we dive head first into the world of weird questions you never knew you needed answers to. Now here's the thing. Strange questions pop up in all our minds at one time or another, but let's be honest, we often feel a bit embarrassed asking them, right? I mean, when was the last time you casually asked someone, what would happen if I stopped showering for a year? Or, could you survive on just potatoes for the rest of your life? It's human nature to wonder about odd things. We get curious, and sometimes the most peculiar ideas creep into our heads. That's the challenge. We're often left pondering these questions without a place to get real answers. That's where we come in. Today, we're taking on the challenge of answering some of the strangest, funniest, and yes, slightly gross questions out there. But don't worry, we've got the science, the facts, and a few laughs to get you through it. Alright, let's get into it. We're answering your bizarre questions one by one. Brace yourselves, it's going to get weird. Question 1. What would happen if you never brushed your teeth? Let's start with the one we teased earlier. What happens if you stop brushing your teeth altogether? Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Within a few days, plaque would start to build up on your teeth, turning into hardened tartar. You'd probably notice some bad breath first, but after a few weeks or months, you could develop gum disease. Over time, you'd experience tooth decay, and yes, your teeth could start falling out. Not to mention, researchers have linked poor dental hygiene to heart disease. So, moral of the story, brush your teeth, people. Question 2. Why do our fingers wrinkle when they get wet? You've probably noticed that after a long bath or swim, your fingers look like prunes. Why does this happen? Surprisingly, it's not just because your skin absorbs water. Wrinkling fingers are actually an evolutionary adaptation. Scientists believe this happens to give us better grip on wet surfaces. So next time your fingers wrinkle, thank evolution for helping your ancestors hold on to slippery things. Question 3. What would happen if the Earth suddenly stopped spinning? Here's a mind blower. What if the Earth suddenly stopped spinning? Well, first, everyone and everything not bolted down would be launched eastward at over 1,000 miles per hour. That's faster than a commercial airplane. Oceans would keep moving, causing massive tsunamis to sweep across the planet. The atmosphere would go haywire too. Basically, it would be catastrophic. Good thing we don't have to worry about that happening anytime soon. Question 4. Could you survive on only potatoes for the rest of your life? The humble potato, cheap, filling, and versatile. But could you survive on just potatoes? Well, theoretically yes. Potatoes have a surprising amount of nutrients, including vitamin C, potassium, and fiber. However, you'd eventually run into deficiencies, particularly in protein and fats. After a while, you'd likely develop scurvy, as potatoes alone don't provide all the vitamins and minerals your body needs. So while you could survive on potatoes for a while, it's definitely not recommended. Question 5. What would happen if you never cut your hair? Ever wondered what happens if you just let your hair grow and grow? Well, despite what you might think, your hair wouldn't keep growing forever. Human hair has a growth cycle, and most people's hair reaches a maximum length between 18 to 36 inches. At that point, it stops growing and sheds. So, while you'd look a bit like Rapunzel for a while, eventually your hair would regulate itself and stop at its maximum length. Question 6. Can lightning strike the same place twice? You've heard the saying, lightning never strikes the same place twice. But, is that true? Actually no. Lightning can and does strike the same spot multiple times, especially if that spot is something tall, like a skyscraper or a tree. The Empire State Building, for example, gets struck by lightning about 20 to 25 times a year. So, if you're caught in a storm, don't assume you're safe just because lightning has already struck nearby. Question 7. What would happen if you stopped sleeping? Here's a scary one. What if you just stopped sleeping? After 24 hours of no sleep, you'd experience impaired judgment, memory problems, and increased stress. After 48 hours, you'd begin to experience microsleeps, brief moments where your brain forces itself to shut down for a few seconds. Beyond that, things get even worse. Long-term sleep deprivation can lead to hallucinations, paranoia, and even death. Sleep is absolutely essential for your health and well-being. So if you've been pulling all-nighters, maybe it's time to hit the pillow. Question 8. Why can't we breathe underwater like fish? Ever wondered why fish can breathe underwater but we can't? It comes down to anatomy. Fish have gills, which are incredibly efficient at extracting oxygen from water. Humans, on the other hand, have lungs, which are designed to absorb oxygen from the air. Our lungs aren't equipped to handle the low levels of oxygen dissolved in water. So, unless you're part of some future gill evolution experiment, it's best to stick with scuba gear if you want to explore the ocean. Question 9. Why do we yawn and is it contagious? Why do we yawn? There's no clear answer, but one popular theory is that yawning helps cool our brains and wake us up when we're tired. But what about the contagious part? Seeing someone else yawn can trigger you to yawn too, and this happens because of something called mirror neurons in our brain. These neurons fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else doing it. So next time you catch a yawn from someone, blame your mirror neurons. Question 10. What happens when you crack your knuckles? Ever wondered what that popping sound is when you crack your knuckles? The sound comes from tiny gas bubbles in the fluid that surrounds your joints. When you stretch or bend your fingers, the pressure in the joint changes, and those bubbles burst, creating that satisfying pop. And no, despite what you may have heard, cracking your knuckles doesn't cause arthritis. Question 11. Why is the sky blue? This one's a classic. The color of the sky has to do with how sunlight interacts with Earth's atmosphere. Sunlight is made up of many colors, and blue light waves are shorter and scatter more easily when they hit the gas molecules in the atmosphere. That's why the sky appears blue to us. As the sun sets, the angle changes, and the red and orange light becomes more visible, hence those beautiful sunsets. Question 12. What would happen if you tried to walk on Jupiter? If you somehow tried to walk on Jupiter, you'd have a very hard time. First, Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface like Earth. It's made mostly of gas, with a thick atmosphere and extreme pressures. If you were to fall into Jupiter, you'd be crushed by the intense gravity long before reaching any kind of core. Oh, and did I mention the insane storms with winds over 300 miles per hour? It's not a planet for a casual stroll, that's for sure. Question 13. Why does the moon look bigger on the horizon? Ever noticed how the moon looks way bigger when it's close to the horizon compared to when it's high up in the sky? It's all an optical illusion. When the moon is near the horizon, our brains trick us into thinking it's larger because we're comparing it to objects on the ground, like buildings and trees. In reality, the moon hasn't changed size at all. Question 14. Can you really see the Great Wall of China from space? You've probably heard the myth that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure visible from space. Sorry to burst the bubble, but it's not true. While the Great Wall is long, it's actually quite narrow, and from low Earth orbit, it's hard to see without special equipment. In fact, astronauts report that other structures, like highways and cities, are more visible than the wall. Question 15. What would happen if you fell into a volcano? If you were unlucky enough to fall into a volcano, you wouldn't just sink like in the movies. Because lava is so dense, you'd actually float on top of it, but the intense heat would cause your body to ignite almost instantly. It's an incredibly gruesome fate. Basically, don't fall into a volcano. Now for the most outrageous question of the day, what would happen if you fell into a black hole? Ready for the mind bender? If you got close enough to a black hole, something called spaghettification would happen. As you approach, the intense gravity would stretch you out like spaghetti, literally. The closer parts of your body would be pulled with more force than the farther parts. Eventually you'd be torn apart, atom by atom, before disappearing into the singularity. Yikes, so yeah, avoid black holes at all costs. Ack. Well, that was a wild ride, wasn't it? From never brushing your teeth to spaghettifying in a black hole, we've covered some seriously bizarre questions today. What's clear is that curiosity is an essential part of being human. We all wonder about odd things, and sometimes the answers are more surprising than we ever imagined. We hope you enjoyed this journey through the strange, the weird, and the downright fascinating. Got more bizarre questions you've been dying to ask? Drop them in the comments below, and we might just feature your question in our next video. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other fun and crazy content. Thanks for watching Fact Frenzy. Keep wondering, keep asking, and we'll keep answering.